Resumed with the Byzantines again advancing on the Muslim line. This time, however, Van focused mainly on Khalid's right flank, where the Byzantine heavy cavalry could do more damage. Bitter fighting ensued as the Byzantine heavy cavalry charge outmatched Arab light mounted units. Amr's division fell back, followed shortly by Shurabil. As Jabala's flank slowly became exposed, Khalid sprang into action at this critical moment, charging into the gap towards the Ghassanid flank. Finally, Amr managed to rally his forces and re-engage. Shurabil too reorganized after taking some losses and went on the offensive. The fighting developed into a bloodbath as the outflanked Ghassanids took a heavy beating and retreated in disarray. Seeing Jabala disengaging, Qanatir too withdrew in good order. Khalid's well-timed flanking attack again stopped the Byzantines. The next day, Van persisted with the same battle plan. Qanatir led the Slavs against Amr's division. Jabala's Ghassanid division, now reinforced by Van's Armenians, advanced on Shurabil. As soon as they met the Byzantine charge, the Muslims were hard-pressed. Arab light cavalry was especially having trouble holding the push of the imperial cataphracts. Meanwhile, Van ordered the Armenians and Greeks forward at a slower pace. Khalid now feared a general Byzantine assault along the entire line. He understood that, considering the losses on the previous day, he no longer had the numbers to repulse a general advance by imperial troops, and his cavalry reserve would not be able to reinforce both flanks at the same time. To avert disaster, Khalid sent ابوعبیده and Yazid forward, aiming to stall Van's advance and buy some time for his troops on the right. He then hastily rushed towards the gaps that opened between Shurabil and Amr, as their lines started buckling under the weight of the Byzantine attack. Meanwhile, the Muslim left held the initial Byzantine push, but Van reinforced the attack with horse archers, subjecting the Arabs to ceaseless barrages of arrows. The point-blank volleys caused such losses to ابوعبیده's and Yazid's divisions that the incident became known as the Day of Lost Eyes. Unable to withstand the storm of arrows, the Muslim left retreated to get out of range of Byzantine archers. On the other side of the battlefield, Amr rallied his forces and halted Qanatir's advance, while Khalid shored up Shurabil's ranks and pressed Jabala's division. The Ghassanids fought stubbornly, but having taken heavy losses, they slowly gave ground. Now that he was committed on the right, Khalid's worst fear was realized. Gregory ordered the general advance of his division, sensing that the Arabs were shaken by the losses they took from Byzantine arrow volleys. Sure enough, Yazid's battered division gave way, with ابوعبیده barely holding Van's Armenians. With the Rashidun left in dire straits, Arab women from the camp picked up weapons and joined the fighting. The desperate last stand of the women inspired the Muslims to hold their ground against all odds. Meanwhile, on the right, the Byzantines finally retreated after several hours of fighting, and the rest of Van's line soon followed. The fourth day of the battle was devastating for the Arabs, particularly the left wing. But incredibly, they managed to... Next morning, Van unexpectedly sent an emissary, offering a truce. Arab commanders met for an impromptu war council. Some argued to accept the truce, seeing it as a victory after fighting a much larger army deep within enemy territory, while others noted that the men are tired, wounded and vastly outnumbered. The consensus was to leave and come back to fight another day. Khalid listened to his comrades, then stood up, saying, "The past 4 days tested our resolve. Now is not the time to concede. Now is the time to be decisive." He argued that the strategy was to be on the defensive, wear out the enemy, then counterattack. And now he sensed that the Byzantines lost heart, and that Van was trying to buy time to raise morale of his troops. The time to attack is now. There would be no truce. During the night, Khalid inspected the troops. Wounded soldiers leaned on each other, but even in the face of such overwhelming odds, their spirit never wavered. Determined to go on the offensive, the Muslim commander sent Dara with 500 riders on a wide flanking maneuver to capture a key bridge across the Rakad Gorge that served as a main line of communication between the Byzantine army and their camp. The fight back has begun. As the sun rose on the next day, from the Byzantine line a hulking figure trotted out on his warhorse into the no-man's land. It was Gregory, the commander of the Byzantine right flank, reputed to be a formidable fighter. Abu'Ubaida answered the challenge. As the overall strategic commander of Arab forces in Syria, before leaving he told Khalid, "If I don't return, you shall resume command of the army after the battle, until the Caliph decides otherwise." And with that, the tall, slim figure of Abu'Ubaida, a man in his 50s, rode out to meet Gregory. The two met in the middle, both excellent in single combat. Circling each other, they traded blows for several minutes, as both armies anxiously watched. Then Gregory ran back towards his line, a trick designed to fool Abu'Ubaida into lowering his guard. As the Arab general caught up with him, in a split second Gregory turned to strike. Abu'Ubaida ducked to evade the blow, striking the Greek general across the neck with his blade. Gregory dropped his sword and slumped from his horse. Moments later, Khalid ordered the Muslim line forward. Having spent most of the night reorganizing the troops, Khalid left a token force of cavalry behind the infantry divisions, spreading their formations to make it appear to the Byzantines like the disposition of the Arab army remained the same as it was during the previous day. And he took all of the remaining cavalry, hiding it in the shallow dips of the plateau. Some of the men in the Byzantine line could hardly believe that, despite such heavy losses, the Muslim army went on the offensive. As the clash in the center erupted, the Arabs pressed hard. They were determined to drive the enemy back, but their substantial numerical disadvantage meant that they could not sustain this battle of attrition for long. Just as Van's troops managed to slow the momentum of the Muslim advance, Khalid sprung his trap. From the gentle dips in the terrain, 8,000 riders galloped forward. By amassing most of his cavalry, Khalid planned to surround the Byzantine left flank. Knowing that time was of the essence, he urged his men to ride fast and without hesitation. Speed would decide the outcome of the battle. Busy with commanding the troops in the center, Van glanced to the left and saw the ominous cloud of dust. He scrambled to send his cavalry to cover the flank, realizing that the Muslim commander had outwitted him. In full gallop, Khalid surged past Amr's division and began to envelop Kanatir's Slavs. The rest of the Arab riders followed their general as he guided them around Byzantine ranks. Over his left shoulder, Khalid could see the fierce fighting in the center as he pushed his steed to go faster. Kanatir's and Jabala's line began folding as they braced for the impact of the Arab cavalry. As the Muslim riders smashed into Van's left, Khalid pierced an enemy soldier, breaking his lance in two. He drew his sword, striking anyone in a red tunic. The horses twisted and turned, wreaking havoc among the Byzantine infantry. Jabala and the Ghassanids disengaged and started fleeing. But to their horror, they realized that the bridge across the Rakad, their main escape route, was blocked. Jabala's troops dispersed as each man tried to save himself. Kanatir fought on bravely, but the Slavic division was surrounded and stood no chance. The entire Byzantine line began collapsing. Shocked by Khalid's rapid maneuver, the Imperial heavy cavalry tried in vain to stem the tide. The noose was tightening as Van's army was being pushed back towards the cliffs. The Armenian general barked orders, and while some Byzantine units kept their cohesion, others were in total disarray. Unable to cope with the rapid movement of the Arab light cavalry, Byzantine cataphracts were attacked on all sides. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, they fled, abandoning the infantry to their fate. Khalid steadied his steed, closed his eyes, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Though it was not immediately apparent, he knew that the battle was won. Van's army was cornered against the steep cliffs of the Rakad and Yarmouk gorges, and over the next several hours Byzantine troops were systematically killed. Such was their desperation that hundreds, if not thousands, of Imperial soldiers jumped to their deaths from the cliffs to escape the wrath of Khalid's troops. On that day, the Rashidun army achieved a victory that would change the course of history forever. The Battle of Yarmouk was certainly the battle of the century, and one of the most pivotal battles in world history. The juggernaut that was the Byzantine army was made up of disciplined warriors, who probably thought they can easily outmatch the Arabic desert army. Unfortunately for them, in Khalid ibn al-Walid, they faced possibly the greatest military mind of the age. In just a few short years, he restructured the ragtag Arab forces into an army that would conquer half of the known world. On August 20th, 636, at Yarmouk, after 6 grueling days, only one side was left standing. Islam stepped onto the world stage. Credit goes to our awesome patrons who make videos like this one possible. Consider joining them to support our work. You can also support us by subscribing to our channel and clicking the bell